Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel, Julia McNeil Crafts. So today we are going to be doing some small art, and the reason being is that box there. You see that? Yes. So I had this amazing idea that I wanted this gorgeous display in my craft space, and I didn't want straight shelves like a normal person with things in a row. I wanted it all over the place because it's more artistic. But then I've been left with, then I've been left with this. And nothing that I have made or I've squirreled through all past makes fits in that tiny space. And that empty space is bothering me somewhat. So today we are going to fix that by making something. So let's just take a little rake through my drawers and see what we have. Okay, so this is my drawer where I have squirreled away and saved lots of bits and pieces ready for a mixed media project. So I'm just auditioning a few different things up. So I've got that little wooden house, just having a little look through. Yes, that is a bottle of shampoo. I've got an old toy, one of these plastic things, and a little wooden cow. Yes, I do realise how ridiculous that is. I'm also really quite impressed at the amount of mess I managed to create in just trying to find a few different elements, to create a tiny piece of art with. It really is quite impressive. Why is crafting so messy and so untidy? Anyway, I did actually tidy all of that away before we got to this stage here. What I have chosen is a little wooden house. I believe I got that either from the range or from the works. I have some little house wooden embellishments, which I believe you can get from the works. I got mine gifted to me, which was really kind. And I have some MDF wooden mushrooms. These are from Mad Hatters. I love their product so much. In fact, I love it so much I sell it on my website. So I can put a link to those mushrooms in the description box below. Now I have this idea of a little house nestled in this whimsical, fanciful forest, and so I want the mushrooms sitting behind the house. Now there's not an awful lot of surface area currently. We have that thin ridge of the roof and the thin ridge of the base. That's not going to be enough to stick those mushrooms to and to make sure that they stay there permanently. So I'm just building up the back of the house with some cardboard, and that's going to increase the surface area that I have to play with. As you can see, I'm putting a combination of gel medium and hot glue down. Gel medium is the best thing in the world when it comes to your mixed media project. It literally will stick anything to anything, and it's because it has an element of flex. So products naturally expand and contract. That happens throughout the creative process because we're going to be putting wet mediums on it and then we're going to dry it. So that happens at that point, but also just sitting in your room where you have a hot, dry day, we have a humid day, we have a cold day, there's condensation. The atmosphere will cause things to expand and contract. We're used to that with our wooden floors and all sorts of things. We get crackages and breakages and we have to allow for movement. So it's the same with our mixed media projects as well. The gel medium allows for that movement. It allows to expand and contract because it has that element of flex. The only thing with gel medium, it's an amazing thing. It literally sticks anything to anything, but it does take a while to dry. And I am really wanting to get on with this project. So I have used hot glue as well. I'm just cutting down this little embellishment because I want it to work for me. I want it to be slightly smaller, so I just chopped that down. So yes, the hot glue, it allows you, as soon as that glue is cold, it is stuck, which is great for speeding up the process, but hot glue also dries incredibly hard and incredibly brittle. So you will find that if you just use hot glue, things will eventually ping off, which isn't ideal when you're trying to create, a piece of home decor or studio decor in my case. So that is why I'm using a combination of both. So at the front here, I'm doing the exact same thing. I am just building up the cardboard so that I have surface area to stick my embellishments to. I'm beginning to just speed up the process now here because I think we're sticking and gluing. It's fairly self-explanatory. So I thought we'll just speed this up a little bit, but you might be interested in seeing me bringing the composition together. So here's where I'm going to add my little houses. So in my head it was sort of like a little village of houses, but it really didn't look like that in the end. But that doesn't matter. It's all about the creative process, and I like to work and be happy with each layer whilst I'm on that layer. So I will sort of aim for perfection on that particular layer and then cover it up. But that's fine. It's all part of I'm enjoying what I'm doing, and I think it gives the overall project at the end lots of levels of interest if we do that. So I'm just going to neaten up that now, and it's time for the gesso. Gesso is brilliant stuff. It's basically a primer, and it will just uniform all the different surfaces so that when we're applying paint and applying mediums, everything's got an even base. For some reason I am painting at a really awkward angle here. I just thought it would be an interesting transition, change of angle, but it was a bit awkward to work with, so I hope that was appreciated. I'll learn all of this a lot better. Now I'm doing it as I feel comfortable, which is holding it in my hand, being able to twist and turn the project and get all of that gesso into all of the little crevices. So here I'm just getting a little bit of torn paper, a little bit of book paper to put on my project. I realised as I was putting this together that I'm not going to be able to do the normal paint finish. Normally I have elements all separate. I paint them individually so I can get a really good paint finish, that I can get really good shading and toning. But because I've stuck it all together, I'm not going to be able to get the same precision. So I thought, why not make the house look distressed? We'll go for a distressed feel. Then the fact that I'm not going to get that precision isn't really going to matter. So I am going to be building up a resist technique using Vaseline or petroleum jelly and these book pages here. So the first thing I'm doing is just sticking on a few with gel medium. This isn't going to be a main feature. It's not going to be something that you're overly going to see when it comes to the end, but it just adds that layer of interest. I love it when you have a project and the more you look at it, the more you see. So it will be there, it will be a nuance, but not the main feature. So now time for the paint. I do love it when I start painting and adding colour. Colour is definitely my favourite thing. So I've put out a few different paints there in some of my favourite colours. I'm also just adding a bit of white gesso to the palette. That's going to allow me to build different shades up as I am working. Pulling it in the right direction, still not worked out these camera angles yet either. And it's cheaper than white paint. So here comes the petroleum jelly. And you want to put that onto the areas that you want to keep. So wherever you put the petroleum jelly, get my words out, the paint is not going to stick properly, and that is what we are going for. Now I do feel that in this little project it hasn't been the best project to show off this technique and how it really works, so I think I will do another video on how to create a resist technique with petroleum jelly or Vaseline. My words today, honestly. It's about the second time I've done the voiceover so far today. I did it 3 times last night. This is all very new and I'm not doing very well at it. So my throat is a little bit dry. And I'm getting my words all jumbled up. So sorry about that. Anywho, I've also just turned down the lighting a little bit here because I had the nice bright light. So it was a nice viewing experience, but you also then couldn't see the colour, which wasn't particularly helpful. So we've just turned down the light in this particular thing. So it's suddenly looking a bit dark and grey. I am sorry. But hopefully, it allows you to see what is going on. So we're putting on this first layer. This first layer is not going to be the main layer that we see. This is going to be, again, one of those nuances. Because I'm going to have pink and things in the mushrooms, I thought it would be good to sort of almost have like a reflection of the pink in the main thing as well. But we're going to be building other layers on top of this. So this is just the first layer of paint going down. And again, you can see that I'm mixing in with the white, and that's just going to give me different tonal values. I'm not really a big fan of just block colour. I like there to be, as I said, nuances and differences of shades and tones within that. So yeah, that is why I kind of like to do it like this. It's also going to add to that, again, that distressed feel, the fact that there's different shades. So now we are drying this off. You can see the pink quite well on that particular angle. That is good. That is what it looks like. So I'm just drying that off. And here we have a cloth. Now I did dampen down the cloth slightly. I originally saw this technique where people used baby wipes, Not a big fan of baby wipes, just because of the environment and things like that. If I do use them, I do try and get the biodegradable ones. So I'm just using a cloth. I love having my painty cloths. They're fine. I've got multiples of them. They're incredibly useful, and you can just bung them in the wash, so they're reusable. So I did dampen down the cloth slightly, which I think was a bit of a mistake, because in all honesty it made that paper really peel, which added sort of extra texture that I wasn't quite planning on, that I then found myself having to smooth out a little bit. So only right at the end, as I did the very last layer, did I work out, do you know what, just do it dry and actually let the petroleum jelly do its job, let it resist the paint, and it did, and it turned out a much better finish when I did it like that. But as I said, it took me to the end to work that out. So what I've did is I have, you've not seen me, but I have put another layer of the petroleum jelly on. You want to put that down on the areas that you liked. So if there's particular areas that you really like in the way it's look, get the petroleum jelly on those, because basically the paint's going to lift and you're still going to be able to see those areas. So put that down first on the areas that you want to keep, and then put it down on just some other random areas, so that you can just build up something that's going to be very organic and look really good. I've kept this bit of heating in because can you see that paint bubbling? I am a big fan of letting paint dry naturally. You don't add to that sort of crazy bubbling texture, which is good, because you don't always want that texture. In this case, I thought it didn't really matter because I was going for a distressed feel anyway. So in some cases I don't mind, but you do get a bubbly texture, especially with acrylics, not particularly with watercolours. But what you do also find is the pigment isn't as bright if you force dry it. You do tend to end up with a brighter finish if you let it naturally dry. But again, I was on a mission to get this done and to get this finished. So I just did it with the heat gun, and it didn't really matter too much in this instance. So now we're going for the third and final colour on this particular part. I'm going for that bright teal, cover that all over, and then start scrubbing it off. Again, I just began to speed up the process here for you. So this is where I was struggling with the damp cloth, and then realised, you know what, just do it dry and a proper elbow grease, and then I was beginning to get the finish that I wanted. I had just damaged the top, so you can see me having to repair this in just a minute. Sort of pulled that paper off, which left it just looking a bit raggedy, so I just sanded it a little bit just to neaten it up. But this side goes much better because I didn't dampen the cloth, and that is the sort of effect that you are wanting to create just there. That's a good view of that. So now we're painting the rest of it. I have got some neon paint here from Pretty Gets Gritty. This is not the colour I want my mushrooms to be, but having that bright neon effect underneath will just really help to make the overall project pop, which is awesome. That is definitely what we are wanting. So I'm putting this first layer down. As I said, this is not the colour that we want overall. It is the colour that it's eventually going to... Oh, words! Yeah, it's just going to help the other colours that go on top of this to look nice and bright. So I don't know if you can see, but there's a bit of green escaped onto that mushroom there. So the fact that I like to work in shades and tones is going to be really useful, because I'm going to really darken that mushroom up, and that's going to cover that green spot as well. So now we're going in with the slightly darker paint. I will keep doing this, multiple layers, and then gradually I will bring in some of that brown paint that you see at the top of the palette there, mix it in with the pinks just to get the shadows in there. Giving that a quick waft with the old heat gun there. It's looking a bit streaky at this point, so your work will go through an ugly stage. Don't worry about it, keep going. Look, it looks beautifully blended now. The magic of time jumping forward. But just work through it. You will get there eventually. Like at the beginning, this little house is looking a bit ropey. It's looking very green, which I didn't want. I wanted blue. So we are going to watch multiple layers of this blue paint go onto this little house at the front, with drying in between. They say that watching paint dry is incredibly interesting. Here's proof. So we're just going to get another layer of that blue. I'm watching that go on, and then You're about to see me dip my brush into that brown there. And that is just going to be so that I can build up the shadow on that side. Don't be afraid of your darker colours. Your darker colours really do make everything look amazing. If you like bright colours, learn to embrace your black and your white, because if you do, you will make all the bright colours pop. I'm also now just adding a little bit of gesso to all the spots. Again, we mentioned earlier that gesso is a primer. I'm going to be doing all these dots with a paint pen, but because you're putting a wet medium on top of a wet medium, they will eventually sort of take on the colour that's underneath and become more pink rather than white. So again, gesso, its job is as a primer. So by putting that down first, when I get my pens out, I'll be working on a primed surface, and it's going to help those dots stay nice and bright and white instead of taking on that pink hue. So this is a preparation for the next step. This is my favourite thing to do, is to get that distress ink out and really blacken those edges, and it does just make everything look amazing. I use, you can see the tiny brush there, I use cheap makeup brushes from Amazon. There are these brushes now in the craft world, within the craft industry. I tend to stick to, sorry, that was my phone pinging for some reason. I tend to stick to some nice, the makeup ones, because they also do these tiny, tiny brushes. So when I'm working on a project like this, it means I can still get that effect in those tiny little crevices. So out comes the white pen now. We're going to get that doodleage down, a few little lines of doodling here. And we're going to go over those dots again. And this is, for me, where things come from life. I get to come from life? No, come to life. I get to the point where I'm like, yeah, it looks all right, but it's not great, but it looks okay. And then as soon as you start putting the white line on, it all starts to pop and come together, and you're like, yay, I love it. So we're on to the final touches now. I'm just using my hot glue gun here. These are paper flowers. They're not heavy. They're not going to fall off. The hot glue gun is going to do fine with that. It's not like when we were sticking the wood together, needed that to be really permanent. So I've just got some roses, some leaves, all paper flowers from my stash, varying different sizes, again to go with this theme of a whimsical forest. So we're just going to get all of that down now. Add those last final touches in there. Watching myself work really fast, because we're on speed up. And then I'm going to get the heat gun out and give that a little waft. The reason being that is you end up with glue strings, and it just helps to remove those ugly looking glue strings. Finally, I'm going to stick one of my ladybirds down, and just using normal glue here. Me being me, this ladybug is black with colourful spots, because that is perfectly normal in my world. So we're going to pop that down right now. And then here is the finished project. So I didn't manage to get good footage of it in situ, but here it is. I'm really happy with how it turned out. It's really cute. So if you have enjoyed watching me craft, please do consider giving me a like and a subscribe, and I will be back with more crafty goodness very soon. Okay, take care then, and goodbye.